Let's get started. Hello, my name is Fred Stacy. I'm the VP of Channels with Connect First, and welcome to the Reporting Studio product demo. Next slide. Just a little house cleaning before we get started. All attendees except the panelists will be muted. And during the webinar, if you have any questions, please either email them to marketing@connectfirst.com or send your questions through the panel, through the GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side. You'll see the question section, and you'll be able to send in your questions, and we'll receive those. So a real quick run-through of what you can expect. We're going to first go through an introduction to Connect First, the history and why we developed Reporting Studio. We're going to talk about KPIs and the criticalness to your business. We're going to run through some of our dashboarding, our ad hoc views, and building some samples and basic data manipulation, and also our reports and manipulating existing reports, and then the scheduler. And then we'll have some time at the end for some questions and answers. So don't forget, please send in your questions as we go through this. So now I'd like to take a minute and introduce the presenters today. Starting out will be our co-founder and Chief Customer Advocate, Richard Minolkin. Richard has been involved in enhanced hosted telecommunications for over 25 years. His focus on customer satisfaction and rock-solid reliability. And he has built and ran and managed complex systems that have included cloud routing, ACD, call tracking, IVR, and other components. And then Ryan Martinez will be going through the product today, and he is one of our customer success managers. Ryan is a member on our customer success team, primarily focused on the Reporting Studio product. Ryan's education and background lie in marketing analytics, and he has experience managing high-profile campaigns designed to exceed KPIs and generate revenue. Richard, go ahead and take it over.
Well, thank you very much, Fred. So good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in this great country. We started Connect First a little over 11 years ago with the focus on customer satisfaction, making sure our customers were happy. And through the years, I have found that when bringing on a new customer, their level of sophistication is often made apparent by the kinds of reports that they want and they're asking for. Having seen that, we at Connect First have some pretty sophisticated customers who know what they need. And through the years, we've built a lot of reports. We started with about 25. We have well over 100 now. And they've been built based on requests from customers. So as time has gone by, there have been fewer and fewer requests for specific reports because of the fact that we've built so many for people, and the customers have been able to use the reports in ways that are helpful to them. But as time has gone by, it's become obvious that having us build custom reports for people may not be the most effective way to do things for each individual customer's KPIs, especially since if you're a BPO, you may have, or you will have, multiple customers, and each one may want something in a slightly different format or want to see things on a different kind of dashboard that are important to them that may or may not be important to other people. Things as simple as removing or adding one or two columns from a particular report, changing the order they're in, to actually building a custom report or a custom chart or view can be very helpful to them in such a way that maybe nobody else needs that one, but they do. And so we decided to bring on a sophisticated reporting tool that will, number one, allow us to create and modify reports much more quickly and easily than we used to have to, where we would have to involve the development team and they'd have to dig in and create a custom report and stick it on the system for everybody to be able to use. Whereas now, many of our customer success managers will have the ability to go in and much more quickly modify an existing report or create one from scratch that somebody will need, or create a data a dump that, for example, a BPO's customer might want in a very specific layout or format. In addition, the Reporting Studio allows for the customers themselves to come in and build their own reports without a need to contact us. Obviously, if they have questions about how things are supposed to be done, they can and will. But usually, there will be IT staff that understand the way that reports are built and the way that databases can be used to create the reports and data that they need. And offering them the ability to come in and do things by themselves is generally the best method for keeping the customers deep into what they need to run their businesses. And thus, we built Reporting Studio. We spent quite a bit of time on it, both in selecting the underlying software we were going to use as our base and customizing it in such a way that, number one, we can go in there and build reports for customers much more easily than if we were building them by hand in our transactional system, and to allow the customers to be able to do similarly. The other thing that this provides us with is a data warehousing. Our platform is highly transactional, meaning that there are lots and lots of things going on all at the same time. We have, thousands of calls going on, and each one of them will be sending messages back and forth within our system, and that limits our ability to store data for a very long time, because lots and lots of data mixed with very fast transactions don't necessarily work well for the transactional part of the system. So the data warehousing system doesn't take calls, doesn't have to respond to real-time requests to make a call or accept a touchstone, and so it can much more efficiently go through and report on much larger sets of data without affecting any performance of the transactional or telephony platform itself. So with that in mind, Reporting Studio has been put here for the customer, for their needs to be able to build reports and data that will allow them to focus on the metrics that they need to focus on to run their business better. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hand it back, and thank you guys for being on here and looking at our new product.
Great, and thank you for that background, Richard. My name is Ryan Martinez. As we briefly discussed, I am one of the customer success managers here at Connect First, again focusing on the Reporting Studio platform. So the first thing that I wanted to cover prior to jumping into the demo of the actual system is just a brief little infograph here on KPIs for contact centers specifically. As you can see, the question here is, what is the standard set of KPIs you should be measuring in your role as a contact center professional? Now, we do realize that these KPIs do vary depending on your business, depending on the time of year, and depending on the role within your company. So I'm going to go ahead and select the supervisor role here, kind of middle of the road, not quite a manager, but definitely above an agent in terms of responsibilities and their look at the KPIs that they may be interested in. So this first screen here will just give you a list of historical KPIs. You may recognize some of these as KPIs that you use either a daily, a weekly, a monthly, or perhaps a yearly basis. But a few of the popular ones that we see here at Connect First are the service level, the offer rate per agent, and the conversion rate per agent, among a few. But this first sentence here, that ideal dashboards are web-based and mobile-enabled to allow supervisors to move around and work with agents regardless of where they are based. And that's exactly what the Reporting Studio platform does, that it allows you both web-based and mobile-enabled access, but then it also allows you the customization that you are accustomed to when it comes to building some of these reports. So our main goals behind the Reporting Studio platform were data integrity, speed of access to that information, and overall customization. So when I go to the next slide, again, just a couple pieces here on KPIs. There's a few examples of near real-time and real-time KPIs, but again, I just want to draw your attention to this bottom paragraph here, that historical and near real-time dashboards give IT and business managers the actionable insights and data they need
to identify and address performance issues. Again, this is a large portion of the reason why we've really moved into this endeavor of Reporting Studio, is the overwhelming feedback that we've gotten from clients in terms of, it's great that you guys have all of these reports within your system, but I'd really love the opportunity to go in there myself and use some of the data points that you guys already have and build custom views that'll relate a little bit more specifically to my actual business. So a large portion of the reason, again, that we did this was to provide you the resources to identify and address some of those issues and hone your KPIs moving forward so that your business optimizes and operates most efficiently. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into our actual Reporting Studio platform here. So the first thing that I'm going to show here is the home page. Now this dashboard for us features 4 reports here by default. The first report is going to show an hour-by-hour representation of the inbound calls that came in yesterday. This report here in the top right is going to show inbound calls over time, again, for yesterday's data. And then agent session metrics in the bottom left here. Now, if you'll notice, the bottom right report is empty, and that is because this dashboard is specifically looking at the Connect First internal account. And as you can imagine, Connect First does accept a number of inbound calls from our existing clients, but we make far less outbound calls than we do in terms of receiving inbound traffic. So this report here, if you were pulling this and you are a client that does make outbound calls, this report would be populated with the information from yesterday as it relates to your outbound traffic. Now, I do want to draw your attention to the links here on the left-hand side of the screen, as well as the help link here in the top right. Now, we've done, as Richard mentioned, extensive work not only to ensure that our existing reports on the Connect First platform appear within Reporting Studio. More to come on that in a few minutes. But we've also gone ahead and inserted many of these tutorials and helpful how-to links so that as you're in here as a customer, if you have simple, one-off questions, you're just not entirely sure as to the functionality of a specific report that you're building, many of these resources here will allow you to simply click in, watch a tutorial video, click into the online learning portal, and obtain some of the answers that you're looking for without actually having to call into our support department. So not only do we have a fully customizable dashboard here, which I will cover next, but we also have a number of resources at your disposal, again, if you do have simple one-off questions that you're looking for. So now I will go ahead and show you an example of an existing dashboard that we've created. And what this does, again, as I mentioned, the homepage dashboard does default to 2 inbound reports, 1 agent report, and 1 outbound report to kind of give you a nice mishmash of information there. This dashboard was created specifically to look at inbound traffic. So this top graph here is showing in terms of the calls that were presented, accepted, deflected, and abandoned, which are all measures that are meaningful to the Connect First platform. It's showing all calls that came into our call center, again, on an inbound basis over the last 2 weeks. And then it further breaks it down on this bottom row in terms of day-to-day totals for the same measurements that we're looking for here at the top. So this bottom left graph shows, again, the same measures, presented, accepted, deflected, and abandoned as it relates to yesterday's data. This middle graph shows the times of those calls, so not the individual amount of calls, but more so the actual elapsed time that was spent on those calls. And then the bottom right graph here shows all of the dispositions that were submitted by agents, again, during the entire day yesterday. Now you may be looking at these graphs here. This top one displays nice and pretty. It's showing across the entire dashboard. These bottom 2 graphs, there's not as much information here as the agent disposition graph, so those are fine. But when you look at the agent dispositions, the writing here is a little bit small, looks a little bit cramped there. So you do have the option to actually, in the top right here, you can actually expand this report and further drill down into the detail of what comprises this inbound agent disposition report. So you can also look at it just in terms of greater detail. The size of it makes it a little bit easier to read. But you can also drill into these individual data points if you so choose to see what actually makes up each one of these sections. So now I will go ahead and show you how to actually create a dashboard on your own. So you can either go ahead and hover over dashboards, and in each one of these sections you have the option to either view all for everything that already exists, or you can go ahead and create a new one, which is exactly what we're going to do. So many of the areas of this system are on the premise of just a simple drag and drop. The goal, again, being that anybody who logs in here, no matter whether they're an agent, a supervisor, a manager, or the CEO of a company, they have the ability to go in and create entirely custom reports regardless of your level of technical expertise. So you can actually drag this panel on the left here over. So this will actually display all existing content that we can use in dashboards. So I'll just go ahead and build a couple of them for you. So this chart that I'm dragging over is, as you may recognize from the one that I previously showed you, is the inbound calls over the last 2 weeks. So if you'll notice when I drag from the left to the right, the middle section here populates with kind of an orangey, beigeish color. That's how you know when you let go of this report, it will actually drag and drop into the dashboard builder. So I'll go ahead and let go of the mouse button here, and it will actually populate that report. Go ahead and pull up a couple more for you while that populates. So another nice thing about this dashboard builder is I have the option, once one report is dragged in, how am I going to drag in another report to make it look nice and pretty for either presenting it to clients or for use internally. Now when I drag over my next report, I have a number of options in terms of the location that that report will go. So I can either throw it on the right, I can throw it on the left, I can do top, I can do bottom. Wherever this color appears when you let go of the mouse button, that's where the report will actually populate. So I'll go ahead and put it down at the bottom. Again, these reports are ones that you recognize from the example that I just showed. This actually shows that agent disposition from yesterday. So I can actually drag the size of this report over, because I do want to drag in a third report to make this report as complete as possible. So once again, as soon as I let go of this report, it will actually condense everything into the area that I've actually specified. And then I can go ahead and drag in a third report here. Excellent. So this will be the last piece of this dashboard here. Again, I can further split out these pieces of data as well, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in its own area. So now, in a matter of a couple minutes, we have a dashboard that not only shows the inbound calls over time in a 2-week period, but it also breaks out all agent dispositions that were submitted yesterday, as well as an hour-by-hour total of those calls that came in, regardless of the agent that those calls actually went to. So this is actually, again, just to point out, it took a matter of a few minutes to create this dashboard that can then be saved as a dashboard in your, once you go to Dashboards View All, it would appear within that dashboard repository. Now, any one of these dashboards can be set as your home page. So that at a glance, when you log in, you'll have the ability to actually look at this data, and at a quick glance, you measure the key KPIs for your business. Now, I always recommend for clients that they do set something custom for their home page, but that they also create a number of different dashboard views, so that in this case, they can log in and view just this dashboard in order to pull 3 reports simultaneously. This way, clients don't have to log in and pull each one of these reports individually to gain access to the KPIs that they're interested in. You can create multiple different dashboard views so that each time it loads the reports that you've already pre-specified. So now I will actually go ahead and build one of our ad hoc views for you. Now, as we mentioned, the main purpose of Reporting Studio, obviously you want the data to have integrity, you want it to be accurate, but the two main pieces towards a Reporting Studio is the speed of access to information and customization. So if you'll notice, when we built dashboards on the left-hand side, there were a number of pieces of existing content that were available for use in the dashboard, and this is where it all starts. Every piece of content that's created within Reporting Studio starts at Ad Hoc. So you'd hover over Ad Hoc and go to Create New Ad Hoc View. Once in here, I'm just going to go ahead and choose our calls domain. So it actually is all call data that came into the Connect First platform. Go ahead and click Choose Data. Now at this point, it's going to pull you into the initial screen for the Ad Hoc Builder. So in each one of our existing reports on our platform, these data points represent specific pieces of data that exists within the Connect First platform. So in order to move that over to start building your report, you want to move these fields from the source section over to the selected fields. So we have a number of different options in order to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just build a quick sample report here. You can either double-click on these terms to get them to move over to the right. You can also highlight each one of the terms and use the arrows in the middle to get it over. You can also do, much like the dashboards, a simple drag and drop to get a number of these statistics to populate. So I'll go ahead and pull in a few of these so we can actually show you a nice report here and kind of how it all populates and works together. I'll go ahead and pull in this UII field, and I will explain what each of these fields is actually looking at once we've actually pulled them all in. So this is details about the actual calls that came into the Connect First platform. This is details regarding which agents took those calls. And finally, we'll jump into some inbound details about the actual calls that came into the call center. So I'll go ahead and pull over its gate ID and gate name. Now, a number of these fields do change. Just in the industry, they're somewhat interchangeable. Gates for us are representative of inbound calls. So not all of these terms necessarily will have meaning to you. Again, it varies depending on the platform that you're using, but we're going to be looking specifically at inbound here. Now on the left-hand side, you have a number of different options for you. In the field section, that's where we're currently at, where we're actually choosing the data points we want to use to build this report. Now I always recommend setting up a pre-filter, specifically looking at the call timestamp. The default of the system in Reporting Studio is to pull data from the beginning of time when your account was actually established with us. So we do have some clients that have, they've been around for quite some time, and if they were to go ahead and try to pull a report without first setting a call timestamp, it may attempt to pull data back, until 2010, 2011 sometimes. So you definitely want to make sure to set this up so that we're only looking at a small subset of data. So I'm going to use these calendar buttons here over on the right-hand side, so I can actually click in and choose the date ranges that I'd like to look at. Now you can adjust this time frame here. So right now it's looking at from the beginning of the day on 4/26 until the beginning of the day on 4/27. No data from 4/27. So this time clock here operates on a 24-hour time clock. So what I want to do, if I wanted to pull from the 26th at the beginning of the day until noon on the 27th, I would just simply adjust that to a 12 right there. If I wanted to pull from the beginning of the day on the 26th until the end of the day on the 27th, again, keeping in mind that it's a 24-hour time clock, I would type in 23, 59, 59. Again, somewhat manual, but this basically just ensures that you're getting an entire day's worth of data and nothing will be left out. So as soon as I click OK, this will populate as one of my filters here for the report. So calls will only populate into this report if they came into the Connect First platform between the beginning of the day on the 26th and the end of the day on the 27th. Now this display section here, if you'll notice, I pulled in UII here. And while UII may mean something to Connect First, this is the unique call identifier for every call that comes into the system. So what the platform does is it assigns a code to each call that comes into our system. So if any one of our customers have specific questions about a call recording, about what the agent did on that call, about how the call actually was handled, we have some context to begin our search using this UII. So what the display section allows you to do, if you're building a report for your customer that you're going to be mailing out, they may not know what the UII is. So you can actually double click in here and change the name of that as it populates in the report to Unique Call ID. So that way, when your client is actually given this report, they won't see UII at the top of the column. They'll see a display label that actually is meaningful to them and their business. Now the last option here, which I won't actually go ahead and save this as a topic since this is for the purposes of the webinar, we do have the option to save not only the fields that you selected, but all of the filters that you prescribe to this report as a topic. This way, when you're going in, if you're creating multiple versions of the same report for your clients, you're not having to start over each time by pulling in and selecting some of those fields. You can save not only the fields, but also the filters as a topic, so you simply have to choose the topic in order to create the next version of this similar report. Now, as soon as I click OK down at the bottom here, we're going to be brought into the actual Ad Hoc Builder, is what it's called. On the left-hand side here, you'll see all of the fields that we actually dragged in the initial step. And on the right-hand side here, you're going to see all of the filters that we established during the pre-filter section. Now, it is important to note that while the goal always is to get the report as close to where you want it first time around, you don't have to select all fields in the initial build. You always have the option to hover here and select additional fields if you realize halfway through building this report there's actually a few more data points that I'm interested in. You can go ahead here and select fields. You also have the opportunity to convert any one of these fields that you brought in to an additional filter in the report. So for example, and again, for the purposes of the webinar, I'm not going to go too in-depth here, but if I wanted to set agent first name as a filter, I could set it as a filter so that this report only displays calls that came into agent first name Bob, and it won't pull anything else in. So it's important to note that anything here that's set as a pre-filter, Reporting Studio will perform this check before it actually populates the report with data. So now I'll go ahead and actually start to build the report. And the reason I'm selecting no data here is so that every time I make a change to the report, I don't have to wait for it to visually populate below. So I can go ahead, again, a simple drag and drop. You can go ahead and drag in the pieces of data that you're looking for. You can also do a double click much like before. So just for the speed of it, I'll go ahead and double click these pieces of data here. And then you also have a number of different options. So as you note here, there are fields up at the top. So each one of these fields represents a data point within our Connect First platform. And a measure represents calculations that are being performed on those data points. So I want to know the call timestamp and every call that came in during the specified time here over on the right. And I also want to know where those calls actually went to. So much like the reports that we had, or the dashboards that I showed you earlier, these presented, accepted, deflected, and abandoned are all measures that we look for here at Connect First in terms of the performance of each of these calls. So I can actually go ahead and drag up these totals up to the top here. And if you'll notice, as I've been making changes, nothing visually has populated down here. And that's because currently the report is looking at what we call no data. As soon as I switch this report to full data, the calculations that are being performed on these fields become apparent. So we're looking at not only the total amount of calls that came in, so the total amount of abandoned, presented, accepted, and deflected calls that came into our call center on specific dates, but also for specific agents. Currently, it's displaying the totals row, but if you clicked any one of these plus signs, it would actually drill into the details of this report. And if you'll notice, there are a number of presented calls here, but only a few were accepted. And that's, again, because this report is specifically looking at our internal accounts, and many of these calls are test calls made by our support department. So naturally, you would see there may be calls that are presented, but they're not necessarily accepted by agents. Now, something that's important to note here, if you were looking at this as a supervisor for your own call center, this may be a red flag for you, that, hey, my agents are being presented thousands of calls, but they're only accepting 4 of them. What's going on there? This report currently is displaying in a crosstab, but if you, again, as a call center manager or supervisor, want to see this in a more visually friendly way, you can actually very quickly change this from a crosstab, what we call a crosstab here, to a chart. So the chart will actually form a visual representation of what may look familiar based on what I've already shown you with dashboards. So again, very quickly you can look at, I have X amount of calls that are presented, again, between the start of the day on the 26th and the end of the day on the 27th, but none of those presented calls were actually accepted. So for our purposes, we understand that this is because it's an internal test account that you can understand many calls will be presented but not necessarily accepted by agents in the interest of time and testing. But again, if this were an actual business, a call center business, this may be a red flag for some of your supervisors. You also have the opportunity to drag out this data row. So if you want to see a total, call timestamp, the totals by agent first name, last name, or username, you have options available to you there. So I'll go ahead and change it just to call timestamp, just to kind of show you some of the options that we have here for formatting. So this now splits out the total of what we just displayed into totals by date. So you'll see again, because we're looking at both the 26th and the 27th, it's showing totals for each of those 2 days. You also have options up at the top left here. Again, at a simple, a few clicks, you can actually choose a chart type here. So if you wanted to display this chart not in a line graph, or a bar graph rather, you wanted to display it in a line graph or a time series graph or a pie chart, you have those options available to you. So you can just go ahead and click into this chart, and it will actually display it as a line graph. Again, there's some overlap here because, again, this being a test account, many of these calls are both presented and deflected or abandoned since our service reps are making some of these tests. So the last piece that I do want to show you is our report section. And while Ad Hoc is the custom area of our reporting studio, Reports features all of our existing reports, as Richard mentioned in the initial portion of this webinar, that currently exist within the Connect First platform. So our development team has put in countless hours of work to ensure not only that this reporting studio platform is functioning as expected, but that also our clients learn to expect to see the same information and the same data that they are accustomed to using in our existing platform, as well as Reporting Studio. So this report here represents an existing report on the Connect First platform. All of these data points are exactly as they display for our current customers. But something that's important to note here in Reporting Studio is once again to the point of if you're creating multiple reports for your clients and multiple reports that are scheduled and emailed out to those clients, they may not necessarily need to see every single column within this report. As you can see, it's quite large. The reporting URL, some of this agent information really is not very meaningful to clients. So the difference between Reporting Studio and our existing platform is that in Reporting Studio, you actually have a number of formatting options available to you before you schedule this email to be sent to your client, or this report rather to be sent to your client. Now, not a right click, just a simple left mouse click. You can either filter on the data that's within this column, you can order by ascending or descending order, and then you also have some formatting options. You can change either the headings or the detail rows. You can change what those are actually called, the font, the size of the font, some style options, as well as some color options. But you can also go in here, and again, for example, if your client didn't need to see the DNIS media code, you could actually hover over here and hide this column. So while this is an existing report in the platform, Reporting Studio does afford you some customization options so that you can then go over here and either export the report to yourself just to test it out, to see how the format looks, to see how maybe some of the changes are accepted. And then you can also save this report as under a different name so that you can then create schedules, multiple schedules sometimes, depending on the clients that you'd like to receive these reports. So once I've gone through, again, as a customer contact center manager or supervisor, again, even agents if they're given access, I can actually go through and hide the columns or reformat the columns that my client has specifically requested before sending this report out to them. So I will actually go ahead into our database of reports. It will always give you this warning here just to confirm that any of the changes that you made when you navigate away will be lost. So I, of course, want to do that to show you this dashboard here. So on the left-hand side, when you're viewing the repository, again, these are all of the reports that exist in our system. You do have some filtering options here on the left-hand side. And I know from a data management perspective, this is extremely useful in terms of efficiency, as well as just educating your customers as far as what you actually have available to you. Anybody can come in here and actually filter on the specific reports they're looking for and create schedules for any one of these reports that appear here on the right. So if a report already has an existing schedule, you'll actually see this little icon next to the report. It looks like a watch. So as you can see, this agent activity report already has a schedule associated with it. So if I wanted to create an additional schedule, I would simply right-click the report and choose the schedule option. Now the initial screen that you'll be brought to is this report scheduler. So it will actually show all of the existing scheduled jobs, again, for this agent activity report. So as you can see, we do have one schedule already in here. You can always edit the schedule by clicking this icon over here on the right. It looks like a little pen. And you can also disable the schedule if, for example, it's set to go for 2 weeks and you know that your client no longer needs this schedule. Rather than having to go in and delete out all of the ones that you no longer need, you simply deselect this box here and the schedule will no longer be active for this report. Now you do have the option, as I mentioned, to create multiple schedules per report. So I'll go ahead and click the Create Schedule button here up at the top. And if you'll notice in the top right, there are 4 different tabs that you click through. You'll want to move in chronological order from left to right. And if any one of these tabs are not clicked through and the data selected, it will default to whatever is standard for each of these tabs. So you definitely want to make sure to move through each of these 4 when scheduling a report. Now you do have the option to start this report either immediately or on a specific date. And then you do have options as far as not only the time zone, but also the recurrence type of the report. So I can just choose a simple, I want it to go once every day, running it indefinitely, and then I can choose some holidays if I want to exclude this report from running on specific dates. But I also have options to get a little bit more complex and a little bit more detailed with this. So I can actually hop in and choose the recurrence type as calendar, which allows me to select specific months, specific days of the month, specific dates in that month, or specific hours of the day. So you really can get very specific as far as the schedule that you'd like to set up for each of these reports. Again, moving from left to right, clicking on the Parameters tab. If you'll notice, the start date and end date are the only parameters that are required in this report. Any one of these gates that it says there is 81 available but none are selected, it will default to selecting all of these. So you don't have to worry about going in and individually choosing the gates that you want if you're looking at everything that's happened in your call center. Same is true of campaigns and of accounts. None of those are required, but they are available as filters for you if you so choose. Now, something that's important to note, when we were in the report scheduler, or the Ad Hoc Builder rather, I showed you this calendar icon as a means for selecting the date range that you would like this report to pull. So this is still an option for you when you're in the report scheduler. I could choose again the 26th. It would pull from the beginning of the day on the 26th, and then I could go down here again and choose the 27th, setting these hours to, again, 23:59:59 if I was looking at a full day. But what's really nice about Reporting Studio is that we do have select date parameter verbiage that you can use in these fields instead of having to manually select the calendar every single time. So for example, if I wanted this report to pull from the start or the end of the day yesterday, 2 days prior, I would put in day -2. So that will actually pull 2 days prior to the start of the current day that we're on now. Again, if I want 2 days worth of data, I would set the same end date as day -2, day -2. The same is true for a few other pieces of verbiage. So if you wanted to look at a week's worth of data, a month's worth of data, a quarter year's worth of data, there's also semi and year available to you. All you would have to do is simply adjust this verbiage here. So if I wanted to look at 2 weeks of data, I could do week -2. If I wanted to just look at last week's, I would just do week -1. The same is true at the bottom here. So there are a number of different options available to you, again, for not only using this calendar here, but also some specific verbiage, so that when you're creating the schedule, it always pulls a week's worth of data each time it's run. Again, going from left to right into our output options, you have options for renaming the report, adding a description, again, editing the time zone, as well as choosing an output locale, which is basically just a language of the report, and some formats. So you can also not only deliver in PDF, but you can simultaneously deliver this report to either your email or an FTP in both CSV or a doc format. You can select as many of these as you'd like. There are also some options for file handling and output destinations. As you can see, this is just showing where this report will be saved within Studio. And these options below are options for outputting to an FTP server if there is an FTP server set up on your end that you'd like to push to. And finally, up top here in the notifications section is where you would set the notification for this report scheduler. So you can add yourself as a recipient in addition to whichever clients or internal personnel that you'd like to receive this report. You also have options to, again, set the subject and the message of that email. But what's really nice is that you also have job status notifications over here on the right-hand side. So personally, when I've built reports for clients, I will add my own email to the to box just to make sure the report is going off without a hitch. But once I've received the report a few times, and I don't necessarily want to receive a notification every time this report is sent to my client, especially if it's sending on a daily basis, I'll just go ahead here and check the send failure notification and add my email up top here to the failure notifications. This way, if Connect First experiences a network event or something happens here locally where we have reason to believe that the client may not have received a specific report that's scheduled, I myself will receive a notification that, hey, there's a potential that this report failed to deliver, so that I can then proactively reach out to my clients to be sure that everything is copacetic and they have everything that they need. So there are a number of different features that I've shown here today. We've managed to run through dashboards, into ad hoc, into now reports, and there are many areas of the system that we simply did not have time to cover just because of the in-depth nature of the Reporting Studio platform. So we definitely encourage that you reach directly out to Connect First if you have any questions or if you simply want to schedule follow-up trainings individually to learn some more about our capabilities surrounding custom calculated fields, the combination of, for example, agent first name, last name, and username into one column as opposed to displaying them in 3 columns like we did in Ad Hoc. So again, the point being is that there's a number of options that are available that we did not have time to show, and I encourage all of you to reach out if there's any more information that you'd like to see. Now I want to hand things back over to Fred, who will be diving into the questions that we received during this webinar here.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I do have quite a few questions, so we'll try to get through as many as we possibly can. The first one, am I limited to how many custom dashboards I can create?
And so the answer to that question is no. That in general, as I mentioned on the webinar, every client will have one dashboard set as their homepage dashboard. And the goal of that is so that they can log in and immediately view the KPIs that are most pertinent to their business. But as I mentioned, I do encourage that clients create multiple dashboards in the interest of efficiency, so that each time you're logging in, if, for example, you want to look at 3 or 4 different inbound reports, if you have a dashboard that's comprised of each of those 4 inbound reports, you don't have to go in and individually pull those to gain the access to the information that you need. So you are not by any means limited to how many dashboards you can create. In fact, I encourage creating multiple dashboards for efficiency and ultimate production.
Excellent. When creating my dashboards, what formatting options do I have?
Great question. So similar to much of what goes on in Reporting Studio, the formatting options that you have is you can change the chart type. So if the dashboard is in fact a chart and it's displaying some of those graphs that we talked about, you can drag the edges of those charts to size them specifically to how you want. You can actually change any of the chart types. So again, if you want to switch it from a line graph to a bar graph to a pie chart, all of those options are available to you. And then you can also expand those reports to view further details on them. So again, a number of different options in the dashboard viewer, and we are, via our development team, working towards additional options that we can provide to you via product releases in the future.
Okay. Am I limited to the fields in your database, or can I make custom field calculations?
Excellent. So yes, you can absolutely create custom fields. In this webinar, we didn't have time to really dive specifically into some of those details as to the calculated fields that you have here, but every field within Reporting Studio corresponds to a data point that's tracked in the CF platform. But calculated fields are extremely important, as you can imagine, when it comes to defining your own KPIs. So we do have a number of those data points, as I went through in the Adhoc Builder, available to you, but each one of those data points can be combined and independent calculations performed on them in order to further drill down to what you're exactly looking at for your business and what's going to help you improve your performance most effectively.
Okay. Let's see here. What is the difference between a prefilter and a filter?
Excellent question. So the difference between a prefilter, as we saw in the Adhoc Builder, and a filter is that prefilters are the only areas where a filter can actually be locked to prevent customers from editing that filter. So in the prefilter section, you have the opportunity to select a call timestamp, as we did, between the beginning of the day on the 26th and the end of the day on the 27th. Now, if I was releasing that report to clients and I always wanted the report to pull on those specific 2 days, in the pre-filter section, I could actually lock that filter so that when I email it out to my clients, they don't have the opportunity to edit any of the filters that are already pre-established in the report. So that really is the only difference between the pre-filter section and filters once you're working in the Ad Hoc Builder, is that if you don't set something as a pre-filter, you won't have the opportunity to lock it and prevent it from being edited on the client side.
Okay. Is the dashboard data displayed in real time?
Yes, that is. So all data that populates into each custom dashboard does so in real time. So when you are logging into the system, again, the point being behind this Reporting Studio platform is ease of access and data integrity. So we want to ensure that every time you're logging into this system, that the homepage dashboard populates with the most pertinent pieces of information to your business. So yes, they are displayed in real time.
Okay. Can we create metrics as the SPH or sales per hour?
Yes, and that actually, while I don't know off the top of my head the specific data point in the system that would correspond to that calculation, we do have a number of resources here still on the development side at Connect First to really help you with some of those more complex reports that you may be building on your side. So if you ever have specific questions about, I'm looking at sales per hour, how would I calculate that based on the fields in your database? You can always reach out to us here at Connect First, and somebody from our development team would be more than happy to hop on the phone either with you directly or connect with the customer success manager here at Connect First so that we can reach out to you and actually walk you through and train you on some of the specific areas that you're looking at.
Okay. I know we try to wrap up a little bit before, so I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll wrap it up. I got another one here. Can I create multiple schedules for the same report?
Yes, and that is definitely another important piece of Reporting Studio. So reports, again, are based off of ad hoc views. So once you've actually saved a view, it's exactly your custom report, is exactly what you want to see out of it, you can actually create multiple schedules for that report, again, hiding specific columns or formatting specific columns depending on the client that you're actually sending that report out to.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, it looks like we're running out of time today. We don't want to keep anybody any longer than what we already scheduled. So if you sent in any questions and we didn't get to it, we'll make sure to follow up via email later today or tomorrow. And again, we will be sending out the link for recorded versions of the webinar early next week. So please share the recording with any other coworkers, friends or associates that you may know that may find this of value. And let us know, please, if you're interested in learning more. The contact phone number is up on the webinar. And thank you again for attending. We do hope you found the information presented very useful.
Thank you very much, everyone.